Welcome back to Tech at Work on CNBC Africa. Now, experts feel that people with economic woes are an easy prey to online fraud, as they tend to accept mail such as job vacancies, lotteries, inheritances, and overseas money transfers. As each dollar becomes more precious, identity and access management is set to remain a top priority for security professionals for the foreseeable future. In studio with me to chat more on this, I have Patrick Devine from Cornastone. Patrick, welcome back to Tech at Work.
Thank you very much.
An interesting topic here. We're talking about security measures specifically because of this economic downturn that we've now gone through. What sorts of unique security threats have come out of this economic downturn or recession?
Well, the two of the most prevalent ones are the Advanced Persistence Threat, or APT, which is malicious code, which is really smart stuff. These guys are getting really good. And it's installed in browsers, specifically looking for internet banking credentials. The other one is the move to target spear phishing as opposed to mass phishing attacks. And this is how this malicious code is delivered. So what they'll do is target people responsible for adding new employees within an organization, and it is well researched and very clever. You need to be pretty smart not to get caught out in these. The Internet Complaints Center in the US published a report yesterday where the overall internet crime, the value that they can put on it for 2009 has jumped to over $500 million from $200 million a year ago. So, and the reason...
So it's a marked increase.
It's a significant increase. And the reason we quote the US-based stats is South African people are a little bit less open to disclosure and less forced to disclose this information.
If in the intro there, we spoke about these online lotteries, and you know, you've inherited £100 million from someone in London. They seem so out there, and how can someone actually even fall for that? But they do.
Significantly, yes. I mean, the guys are also getting a lot smarter. So what we're seeing locally now is more around World Cup soccer. Buy tickets, free tickets, cheap tickets. There was a report yesterday. A Botswanan-based company spent R2 million on forged tickets for the World Cup. So yeah, and you're also looking at volume. So you know, people, Tannenbaum and these guys, people fall for these things if it's too good to be true, you know?
If we look at the slowdown in IT spend because of the recession, you know, companies are maybe cutting back in their IT departments, and therefore security measures are maybe not as good as they should be. Are criminals jumping on this bandwagon, and are we seeing it a threat from internal as well?
No, well, that's a good debate, because often the weakest point is not the technology. Lots of holes are in the technology, but it's often more around people and around process. And the guys are looking for the weakest link on a continuous basis. I think some of the more prevalent threats are internal people within organizations downsizing. So it's not uncommon to hear about the salespeople in a job interview bragging that they've got their previous company's sales database with them, you know, to join. So, and those kind of, the ethical side of that is debatable. The other one is the private investigators. If you Google, you can get private investigators in South Africa that will get you itemized billing, your financial, tax, health, criminal records for any individual that you want for a small fee. This pervasive what's legal and what's illegal and who clamps down on it is not that clear-cut.
Well, if you had to use a private investigator, for example, is that legal in South Africa?
Well,
it might be on the unethical side.
It's certainly not legal. However, where that's used mostly is divorce courts. And it's illegal for newspapers to print stories about the divorce courts. But it is a huge problem. I mean, any middle-class divorce, both parties get there knowing everything about each other if it's acrimonious, yeah.
If we, in the future, obviously identity theft is a major issue at the moment. What type of security user interfaces do you see coming out to prevent this?
Well, if you look at what the problem is, so Secure Sockets Layer, or SSL, has been used extensively. But what that's really doing is encrypting the chain from the server to the browser. But we're seeing the two big areas of where malicious activity takes place is within the browser space, the so-called man-in-the-middle attacks, the malicious code there, and also at the back end, so past the web server onto the gateway, where the data's in clear text. So Heartland, who lost 130 million credit card records in 2007, that occurred on the gateway. These issues that we're getting now with the browser-based attacks is occurring in the browser. So what is starting to be punted now quite widely is advances in encryption. It's, the buzzword is end-to-end encryption, and this is what Heartland's implementing to try and recover from the massive loss that they encountered. So the technologies have advanced, they're a lot simpler to implement, and instead of encrypting the channel, you encrypt the data from swipe through to the whole processing of from cradle to grave. The data is encrypted. The only time it is decrypted is when you're actually making a payment in a credit card industry. And some of the big consulting firms are recommending this approach. Some of the IT analyst firms are starting to recommend this approach. And it's a significant way that organizations can reduce the cost of compliance. So if you look at people coming at compliance for compliance's sake, whereas you should rather approach it from let's be secure, and as a default, you're compliant from being secure rather than the other way around. But business people don't always see it that way. Yeah.
Patrick, just lastly, very, very briefly, we're looking at local banks having to be PCI compliant by September this year. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
What are some of the obstacles that they face to actually get PCI compliant?
Well, the main one, and it's not just the banks, it's anyone who deals with credit card information, is what they've been forced to do is to examine why they keep information and where they store it. So what historically, like for example in the retail industry, some of the players, you swipe the credit card, they take that credit card number and put it in their data warehouse, their order entry application. They use it when just as a way of uniquely identifying the person for various reasons beyond payment. So a good practice is not to keep it at all if required, and where you do, make sure it's not exposed where it shouldn't be.
All right, Patrick, so it's a never-ending battle.
It's a never-ending battle.
Thanks a lot for joining us on Tech at Work.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Up next is our weekly segment with the editor of Stuff Magazine, Toby Shapshak, where we take a look at the latest gadgets on the market. Let's take a look at what he had for us.